Good morning, afternoon and evening, wherever you are in the world watching today's webinar. The question we're going to address is how conversational AI can deliver superior experiences, better outcomes and lower costs, the trifecta impact. Much has changed in 2020, but there is one constant. Organizations need to trade and customers still expect high levels of service. Technology allows your customers to remain at home and order goods and seek services, but how do you, the provider, keep pace when your organization's people power is constrained by COVID? We welcome your engagement and input, so please be sure to submit your questions via Zoom, and we'll have a round of myth-busting and Q&A later in the webinar. We're joined today by the Chief Digital Officer of EXL, Ankor, who wears the customer and business hat to bring insights to Fortune 500 companies. And if you want to know about anything and to infuse AI and cloud capabilities together into every single important customer interaction, just ask Ankor. First, we're going to look at how not all AI is created equal. To tell us about that and more, please welcome the President and CEO of Amelia, an IPsoft company, Chetan Dube.
Thank you very much, Alistair. It's a privilege to be here, sharing this forum with EXL. We're living in a very interesting time where the fundamental platform for how services are rendered is shifting. The last decade saw it shift from people to more cost-effective people. And this decade and beyond is seeing it shift from people to digital people. So the choices of most companies face is, do we innovate fast or do we die slowly? And we're in a company of a pioneering institution in EXL that has chosen the latter, that we will innovate, cannibalize our own operating model and become a dominant player in digital tomorrow. So it's a privilege to be here. I think the first, the customer care outlook. So how real is this? I think one of the first things we must ask ourselves, can chatbots really deliver superior or equivalent to human levels of service? There is a fantastic paper out from University of Nebraska that did a research that said that the average IQ of a 18-year-old is 98 on a Stanford-Binet score at the scale, and that of a 6-year-old is 55, and that of one of the smartest chatbots was found to be 47. How could you deliver superior customer service with the IQ of a 5-year-old? And so how real is this? Are they really getting to be equivalent to human levels? And what is required for the chat agents to start to become human levels of service? We look at some empirical examples here. If you look at, say, Paribas, when your principal securities customers, including Total, Orange, are doing average trades of 10 million euros, you know that you have moved ahead of chatbots into a digital employee arena. You know that you have achieved human equivalent level of fidelity and reliability. You take another example and you look at Telefonica, or you look at Sterling, and I think some of the banks, Sterling digital banks, and I think another, if you look at Sterling National Bank, a classic digital bank coming up. Klarna is another example of such a digital bank. Would you guess the largest bank in Europe is 6 years old? 78 million subscribers, Klarna. So I was talking yesterday to the CEO of a very large bank in the United States, in the South, and their assertion was these digital banks are coming in at a fast and furious pace and attacking our higher margin, lower friction assets. Mortgage origination, classic high margin, low friction asset, which is under the attack. You find the Rocket Mortgage coming in from the other side. Sterling National is another one of such attackers that is coming in. Typical accounts and credit cards, you're not making on accounts particularly, you're not making that much in the margins, you've got much more friction on those assets. So you start to see that these banks like Sterling has just started this journey. Klarna, for instance, is doing about 363 concurrent sessions at any time using digital technologies. Think about that, 363 concurrent employees equivalent by your digital employee. The fundamental platform for which how Klarna is fusing together retail and banking to become the dominant player in banking in Europe. Telefonica is another classic example that you see here, and their director, Gonzalo Gomez Cid, has, under their chief digital officer, has been the lead catalyst of making a classic telco transform into being a digital telco. The question that he had asked himself is that, and at the start of the journey, the NTT CIO had mentioned that we are living in the world of IVR 2.0. So IVRs had failed. The question is, can we actually mimic IVR kind of behavior by decision tree systems? We have a simple classification in the front, and we actually take whatever the person is saying in natural language, and we use deep neural networks and we classify it into one of the buckets. What kind of returns would we get by such technologies is the question we must ask ourselves. If you ask Gonzalo, he will tell you that only 14% of the cases coming into Telefonica call center, into a telco company, are happy cases. What your classic mutations of decision tree kind of simple chatbots do, linear chatbots do, is they do the exact equivalent of a hamburger menu. So you have 86% of the time that people are calling the phone company, they're calling the phone company about an actual problem. No, they're not calling the phone company about the hamburger menu equivalent, which says, what's my account balance? Or can you please print out my statement? They're calling the phone company about conflict resolution, about some actual issues happening. And you find Telefonica yesterday over 199,000 calls coming in with a resolution rate of 89% of them being resolved by a digital agent. So you start to see that the digital era is here. And how do you de-risk it, and how do you actually deploy this becomes a real big question for you. One of the classic ways to de-risk that we are starting to see in the industry with EXL is that most of the call centers already have a call center technology at the front, be it Genesys, be it Cisco, be it Avaya, be it AWS Connect, and you have some 10,000 agents or 5,000 agents hanging off that call center technology in the front. Well, since you had 1,000 human agents hanging off that technology, you add 1,001. And that one is a digital agent. And then you can, in a very de-risked phased manner, you can turn, I'll only have 10 calls coming into the digital agent. Now I feel comfortable, I'll have 20 calls, 20% of the calls. And Telefonica, I'll have 40% of my calls being deflected. And that way you can actually have a phased manner of implementation of the technology. If we move forward to the next slide, we can actually see what goes into into delivering human equivalent customer experience. So if you are on board right now and you've taken the time this morning, given us the privilege of saying, yeah, you are serious about undertaking this digital journey. You are serious about what McKinsey has talked about, 45% margin enhancement as opposed to 35% margin compression in classic manual delivery versus digital delivery. So what is required to be able to achieve human levels of customer care? First, you have to cross the chasm. Don't you have to move from classification to comprehension? One of the largest banks here, Chase CEO says, I want to put a personal banker in the pocket, not just a hamburger menu equivalent. His assertion is, I want to talk to my digital agent and say, check to see if I have adequate money in my checking account to cover my month-end bills. If not, move the requisite amount from my money market account. Is that not a personal banker now? And how different is it from a chatbot? No chatbot today can handle that. Why not? Because all chatbots today use deep neural networks to classify what you're saying, and they don't cross the chasm from classification to comprehension, which requires a fusion of symbolic logic with the connectionists and deep neural network models in a research that is being pioneered in conjunction with Stanford. The second part that your customers expect is flexibility. You don't want your customers to feel that they're in a white jacket. You want them to be statefully switching from one thread. You're actually doing that same example of like, hey, transfer the requisite amount, but you're like, hey, wait a minute. What is the amount of money that I have in my money market? You want to be able to statefully switch over to that and then switch back to that same context. Okay, yes, you do have adequate amount of money in your money market account. So you can switch back and say, yes, I would like to complete the transaction of moving the requisite amount to my checking. What else do you expect from your digital employee? You want him to be continually learning. Credit Suisse, the ex-CEO of Credit Suisse said that the potential of Amelia in transforming Credit Suisse is pseudo-limitless. Why? Because the learning had gone from 23 to 42 to 76% in the month 1, month 2, and month 3. Learning is key. You have to learn from every abandon that happened. You have to learn from every intent miss that happened. You have to learn from every escalation that happened. Imagine if you had the capability today to have a smart agent put in your call center that could, what the CTO of the largest bank here could just read the digital exhaust coming out of all the customer chat transactions. Would that digital agent not start to represent the cumulative intellect of all those human agents? And that's called the episodic memory and the power of episodic memory of human beings. You need your digital agent to continually learn for improving the customer service continuously. You want them to be threaded the same way that human brains are. Right now, your event-based memory of all interactions with chatbots in the frontal part of your cortex is engaging. Your factual brain is engaging. Your analytic part is engaging. All parts of your brain are engaging when you are starting to have this conversation right now. Affective. McKinsey had research that said NPS has more to do with the EQ of service provided than the LQ, the logical quotient of the service being rendered. The digital agent has to have an empathetic connection. with the person they are serving. And I'll touch on unsupervised analytics, because analytics is often an abused term because it's all manual analytics. You take copious amounts of data and you annotate it, and then you build models. But what a CEO really wants to learn is that I've got all these transactions that are happening. Don't just give me an NPS score up or down, but tell me, deconstruct that NPS score and tell me what are the aspect ratios and the causal factors that contribute to that NPS score. Explain to me that they are happy with my first-time resolution, but they're not happy with my billings. They're not happy with my interest rates, but they are happy with my agents in the service, but they were not happy with the average speed of answer. You have to get, as a CEO, you need to be able to see the deconstructed aspect ratios that contribute to the NPS scores for you to be able to affect a better outcome. And a digital employee can give you that, in fact, which is superior than a human employee. Of course, it has to have a human social talk, which benefits from sequence to sequence mapping. And the biggest challenge is the ease of adoption. And you say, oh my goodness, you've created a human equivalent brain. How do I adopt him? That's where you need to ask yourself, can you have AI build AI? Can you have a natural language interpreter that can take natural language input from you and transcribe it into the minds of your digital agent while you speak in any of the 103 languages that Amelia understands? So it's really a privilege to be here with the leaders at EXL, and the person that is actually, we are the egg-headed mathematicians that are developing these neocortical equivalent models that deliver what has always been an elusive Turing horizon, the same quality of, if not superior quality of service that you expect from your human employees. But the people that are actually making that happen in the world and taking that technology and making a tremendous impact in their top 30 accounts, or accounts like the leadership at EXL. And we are privileged to have the person leading the command there, their Chief Digital Officer, Ankor. Ankor.
Thanks, Chetan. Before we get into some of the thoughts we wanted to share, I just wanted to go into a little about the genesis of this relationship between Amelia, IPsoft, and EXL. I think we've been working very deeply with our clients, understanding their processes and helping them move up the digital intelligence curve. And finally, in Amelia, we found an organization that built cutting-edge technology, but actually focused on the customer experience. As I listened to Chetan over the last few minutes, I really didn't hear about automation or cost reduction. That actually is poison for any AI initiative that's being implemented today. And I go back actually 15 years when we were helping customers move from call centers to just digital, a web experience. And we looked across financial services, insurance, healthcare companies at that time. Anyone who approached it from a cost reduction mindset was never able to really build the capabilities that were needed. And I think that explains the partnership between Amelia and EXL. It's two companies who are almost maniacal about improving the end customer experience. And I think that's why yesterday, Amelia was ranked a leader in chatbot AI technology. And today, EXL has been ranked a leader by Forrester as a company that is able to infuse analytics and intelligence into operations. So it really is a coming together of what we believe are two organizations who are very good at what they do. Let me talk a little about the customer experience over here. Chetan alluded a bit in passing to the Turing test, right? And it's very easy to sort of think of AIs as, can you distinguish between an AI and a human? I think when we look at our customer organizations, we're actually setting a higher bar. We call it the free choice test. We want to be able to offer customers the choice. Do you want to talk to a human agent, or do you prefer talking to an AI? And we want customers to be able to choose the AI. When that happens, the ease of use and the intuitiveness of the AI is par for the course. And we sort of talked about, we've tried to think of this from the customer's point of view. And there are numerous examples. We're working with IPsoft at one of our UK clients, where the chief reason to bring AI in was not cost reduction, but it was to enhance the interactions from their field service agents when they reached out to a central location for better information. And they just found that an AI could handle those requests in an infinitely better way. And as I move off customer experience, besides the free choice test, more times than not, even in demos, when we integrate Amelia technology into a client use case, we are able to create a wow factor even in a demo with a client, because they're able to see things which only their best agent could do, and that too on a good day. So to us, customer experience is of paramount importance when we're thinking about automating customer interactions using AI. Gene, can we move to the next page, please? Chetan talked about a few of the clients who are leveraging this. We wanted to give you a window into some of the high momentum use cases. I think Chetan talked a lot about the first pillar, the customer servicing and contact centers. IVR, I think it's almost wrong to call it IVR 2.0. We're actually dismantling what was considered IVRs by bringing some of the AIs in. Case setups. Typically for our healthcare insurance clients, a case setup could be almost 5 to 10 minutes. And using Amelia, we're able to radically bring that down. And the reason we're able to radically bring that down is because you've got the talent of the best agent able to interface with the customer or the provider. I wanted to actually focus on where we're seeing a lot of traction in the second pillar, debt collections. For too long, debt collections has been about an adversarial phone call between an agent who needs to get money out of a delinquent customer. We're seeing AI have significant traction in this space. First of all, when people are vulnerable in today's economic times, it's much easier to talk to someone who's not a human, but who is still able to empathize with you. And typically that was a troublesome technology experience, but today with the AI technology at IPsoft and our domain understanding of what debt collections really is, we're creating AI agents who are not just collecting faster, but they're able to get more information about the customer, which is actually helping the call center agents become more powerful. And finally, AI is helping revenue growth in the third pillar. We've got our life insurance customers moving some of their lead validation from human agents to exploring AI agents because it leads to a much simpler and standardized experience and a quicker experience. I want to talk a little about some of the next gen use cases that we're seeing with our clients. 100% quality monitoring has been the holy grail. With Amelia, we've enabled Amelia not just to take customer calls, but we're actually able to listen in, help nudge agents, and proactively, we're developing applications to measure quality on an ongoing basis. And so what you're doing at this point is predictive NPS remediation. It's the good side of Minority Report going back 10 years, where you're able to sense adverse things before they happen and actually fix them. Below, we've talked about the business case. As you would see, cost is a very, very small part of this. If your AI business case is about cost, you're probably going to fail. Cost is gravy. You are going to get 30, 40, 50% cost reduction. But unless you focus on how this AI installation is creating revenue or improving customer experience, I think Amelia and EXL might not be able to help you as much. It's really about a holistic business case to transform your customer experience. Gene, can I request you to move to the next page, please? This is putting on our operations hat. We work with a lot of our customers' operations organizations, and it's not about bringing a new technology. It's actually changing the DNA of the organization, and we're seeing our clients swiftly change the wheels on a moving car, right? They're working with IPsoft and EXL to bring in AI technology, and at the same time, they're changing the organization. I want to talk about a couple of the pivots. What do we mean by customer outcome focus versus supply side focus? Is that just jargon? No, it's not. Till a few years back, a lot of our client organizations focused on abandon rate, availability, how quickly do you pick up a call? Those supply side metrics are metrics of the past. Today, with us, they're focused on the outcome. And I think Chetan alluded to this. They're less focused on whether a customer abandoned a call. They're more focused on why did the customer abandon it? And that segues to my next pivot. We call it squeezing the cost lemon. If there's any cost reduction initiative at our clients, the operations team typically gets asked to give blood to that first. And it's always about how can you cut heads? How can you do things in less time? AI is changing that. It's about learning. We look at which calls can't be addressed by an AI agent and seamlessly build that learning into the AI, and it becomes more powerful. So it's not about reducing costs through operational levers. It's just making the AI more powerful. And over time, it begins to handle more complex interactions. The last piece I'll focus on is in the bottom right-hand corner. Why are clients coming to IPsoft and EXL together and not just to an EXL or not just to an IPsoft? I think our clients have realized that what they need is a partner who brings the cutting edge technology, but they also need a partner who understands what they do today. And what we're doing at clients is we understand their existing process. We're able to quickly ramp that up into the AI technology with very, very agile partners at IPsoft. And that gets the client using and experiencing AI agents in less than 12 weeks. And actually, I might have given away one of our myth and reality questions as we get onto it. But that's why we're really, really bullish about this. It's bringing together two best of breed partners to really solve a client problem and to transform the end customer experience. With that, let me hand it back to Ali. Ali's got some interesting myth and realities for us, and then we'd love to take some questions from all of you. Ali, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ankor. Excellent. Yeah, so now what we'd like to do is to give some time over to the audience for their opinions. So, Gene, let's bring up the poll. Yeah, thank you. So what you'll see in front of you, ladies and gentlemen, is our poll. And please do take part so we can actually move on and separate some myths from realities. Please note that you may need to scroll up and down through the options. So let's start polling now. So you'll see the first question is conversational AI solutions can deliver superior customer experience within what period of time? Well, there's multiple choice there. Number 2, conversational AI is another core routing solution that will not solve end-to-end customer problems. Myth or reality? 3, conversational AI solutions do not support multiple languages. Myth or reality? Number 4, conversational AI solutions are applicable to limited use cases and a restricted number of customer interactions. Myth or reality? And finally, number 5, conversational AI solutions are similar to chatbots with a rigid unidirectional kind of conversational flow. Myth or reality? So I'm just going to wait now to see what the results of those are, and then I'm going to move over to our Mythbusters, Chetan and Ankor, to actually answer some of those. So as the polling takes count here, I'm just waiting for my note, and I'll tell you exactly where we are.
Ali, I realized Chetan and I couldn't answer this. This is one of the few tests where I knew the answers, and you didn't even let me participate.
I don't think there's many questions on this subject between experience and conversational intelligence that you gentlemen couldn't answer. So I'm really pushing the audience there to challenge you as hard as they can. So I haven't yet got a poll, but what doesn't really matter. That'll come through shortly. But what I'm going to do, Ankor, is actually move to you. Who are you going to call? Mythbusters. Conversational AI solutions can deliver superior customer experience. How long does it really take? Is it a year? Is it 18 months? Is it longer, Ankor? What's the truth?
So Ali, I think I started alluding to this at the end of my session. I think it takes less than 3 months. It takes within 2 to 3 months, but not for everyone and not for all cases. It requires the correct technology. It requires a flexible, really intelligent technology like Amelia and IPsoft. And it requires a partner who understands how you're doing business today. Very often, you can spend months, not because the technology doesn't lend itself. The technology is perfect. You could spend months just because you don't understand the way things are done today. We're deploying this at clients where from start to finish, we are able to go live in less than 3 months, and we choose the correct transaction. And it's really powerful because you want a little taste before you get in, right? Our clients are to some extent skeptical of technology, and they need that outcome in quickly so that it opens the gateway to more. Chetan, your thoughts around this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up very well, Ankor. There are two vectors that really play into this, the time part. One of them is, can you learn? Can you process mine? Can you mine the embedded intelligence in processes by inductive learning techniques like an intelligent human would do? And can you create these process flows into the brains of your digital employee that can short circuit a large part of the transcribing that has to be done manually? And the second vector that Ankor alluded to is, can you really have a natural language interpreter? Can you speak to your AI? Can a business user say to its AI, I want to build a digital employee for my mortgage processing. I want to build it for my risk management. And I want to have for mortgage issuance, I want to origination, I want to be able to ask these questions. And for AI to have a front of AI that is acting as a natural language interpreter that transcribes into the brain, a complex brain of neocortical equivalent brain of real AI in the back. Those two vectors are key at delivering what Ankor and EXL are pioneering, with its time to value and very quick gestation cycles in realizing those returns on investment.
And I'm really pleased to say, Ankor and Chetan, that 79% of our audience agree with you and believe it is a reality that we can do it in that time span. And I'd also add, Ankor, to your point, that any client wishing to adopt this needs a partner like EXL who can take them on the journey, because so often you come across the vice president of not invented here. And I think that will change when they deal with people like you and the insight you've got. So let's go.
May I just add one thing? If you took the same survey about a year ago, these 79% of the people are pioneers. They are the ones that have shifted that equation to being realized within 2 to 3 months. A year ago, it would have been 6 to 9 months. I would venture to guess that. Ankor?
I completely agree, Chetan. I was going to suggest that for the 21% who don't believe that, we'd love to put some skin on the line and move that to 100% and make them see the value.
Well said. Let's move to number 2 then, see if we could see what the myth busting looks like here. So here's the question. The question was, conversational AI is another call routing solution and will not solve end-to-end customer problems. Chetan, could you take that as a starter?
Yeah, so you do have call routing at the front of a lot of these call center products. You've got live person, and a fair degree of sophistication exists in any of the call center termination agents, whether it's Cisco via AWS Connect or Genesys. You have these capabilities of doing call routing quite effectively. The question is, if you only do the call routing, and if you have manual elements in this process, thinking minds would like to explore, is the weakest link of the chain not going to govern the strength of the chain? If you've got manual processes in the middle, take classic, I've got all kinds of silos of automation that exist. I've got some automation that is doing some chatbot in the front end. I've got a massive ticketing system in the middle, and I have got some RPA in the back end. And if you start to look at the end-to-end, my RPA ran in less than 60 seconds. My front-end chatbot ran in some very quick thing. My ticketing system was a glut of information. My back-end system was another manual system. And you look at your time to resolution, and your time to resolution, we are seeing an average of 17 hours. So the question is very apt. You really need to be able to get to end-to-end automated resolution. And that means that you need to be able to have a digital employee that threads through all of these. And that's the promise of cloud, I tell you. We wonder, and I think we are in the company of some distinguished audience here, so I'll take advantage of that. The promise of cloud. Is the promise of cloud elastic compute? Is the promise of cloud storage cycles from the cloud? And that's about 272 billion market today. Or is the ultimate promise of cloud digital employees from the cloud that can actually service this whole thing end to end? And if you subscribe to the latter, that it's the digital employees from the cloud, you're looking at a market impact of 2.9 trillion target market in 2021. According to both World Economic Forum and Gartner agree on that. And so that's the trend, that's the shift, the seismic shift that we are starting to see. And you're absolutely right. It has to be more than call routing. It has to be end-to-end automated resolution done by a digital employee that can actually carry the work from inception to satisfactory completion without having manual processes that drag down the MTTRs.
Anything to add to that, Ankor?
I actually wanted to just add one thought. What we found within an enterprise is if you don't have the correct data available, call closures do suffer. You know, it's like if the blood isn't flowing freely, if there are clots along the enterprise, you are not going to function properly. And therefore, I think in some of our implementations, the key has been to make sure that the correct data is made available to the AI agent, right? And that's not as simple as, oh, just build a data pipe. The truth of it is that our clients are large clients who've grown organically and inorganically. So a part of the secret sauce is bringing the right data, making it available actually typically through cloud services to the AI technology. And that really moves it into closing calls and closing customer issues.
Yeah, and I guess Ankor, you help them navigate that the data lake or the data ocean and get the right data. And so it's a good point.
We love data.
Well, it won't work without it, and you're absolutely right. And it's interesting that only 10% of people thought that it was true that it's just another call routing solution, and in fact, that 90% of our viewers here agree with you, gentlemen. Again. So let's move. Let's see if we can bust the next myth, which is number 3, and that is the fact that conversational AI solutions do not support multiple languages. Is that a myth or a reality? And I think I've got an Ankor. Perhaps I'll start with you on that one. Is it only one language? Is it multiple languages?
So this one I'm actually going to pass off to Chetan, because this one we've experienced and It's clearly not one language, but I don't want to steal Chetan's thunder because this is really about a fantastic technology. So Chetan, why don't you take this one?
Great.
Thanks, Ankor. 103 languages to be accurate. And not only, as Ankor is alluding, articulating better than I could, input can be a different language. Output can be a different language. You can actually, in the middle, you take a biggest insurance company in UK whose India offshoot is just going rapidly into taking, by the way, its biggest amount of revenue source. Ankor has suggested that the revenue source is a critical part. It has to be about technology that is adding to originations, adding to revenue growth. And if it's real AI technology, it will add to your top line. In this case, about 12% more originations being targeted. And that's a big part of their renewal part is one of the big things that they can actually have more renewals than the average done by humans. In this case, it starts off with part Hindi, part English, and translates in fluid way in the middle. But what is the thing that you're targeting is what Ankor said, outcomes. Language is just the medium. In all 103 languages, you could switch it. We have customers, 7 out of the top 10 banks that switch from French, and they're all multinational banks that switch from French to English to German. In the end, we're targeting what Ankor said, outcomes. Did we get the job done at human equivalent or superior levels?
Great, thank you for that, Chetan. And again, overwhelmingly, nobody believes it's only one language, but I think they may well be surprised that it's 103 and that actually Amelia can switch languages even while she's talking to the inquirer on a call center call.
Alistair, you might disagree though. You're lingua franca, no? There's only one language where you're from.
I have to stay here as neutral given my role, Chetan, but thank you for testing me. Look, number 4, conversational AI solutions are applicable to limited use cases and restricted number of customer interactions. Is that a myth or reality? And which one of you gentlemen would like to field that?
Ankor?
Yeah, sure. So let me cheat a little, actually, Ali. I see on the chat that one question has come up. I wanted to just motivate everyone else to add questions. I think Mahesh has a question on conversational AI. So Mahesh, we've got just a couple of myths and realities, and your question's the first, but we look forward to receiving more questions. And I think Chetan and I would both love to answer yours because that's a bit of the wow factor in some of the use cases we've shown clients, exactly what you pointed out. But let me come to your question, Ali. I think the key is AI is not rigid. And what we're finding, just as you can take a call center agent, start them on a simple transaction of, say, account balance, and they understand the domain, and then you move them to something slightly more complex, and then you get them to address changes, and then you get them to fraud. The reason you're able to do that is because the human being is learning. But what actually are they learning? They're learning 3 things. They're learning ontology. And what is ontology? Ontology simply is, what are things called in that domain? That's what the AI is doing. They are learning about the context. So when you're doing a simple thing as giving a customer a balance, you are learning about the customer and you bring that to the more complex transaction. So I think the learning, the context, the ontology, the context, as well as the domain, and on all these 3 things, we are able to combine the existing process and the data along with the AI technology. And so it really becomes cross use cases. Now, we want to be candid. You don't want to start with the most complex use case. I go back to a story about 15 years back. There was a travel client of ours. They had an emergency travel business, and they decided that was the first thing they were going to move to a digital channel. Really bad choice. When someone's in a storm, missed 3 flights, at that point, they might want something, they might want the comfort of a human agent. Start with the correct use case and move up to the most complex one. So I think there's a little bit of experience that needs to be woven into the choice of use cases too. Chetan, any additional thoughts?
No, you nailed it, Ankor. It is rigid. Chatbots are rigid if they don't have learning. That's why when you look at classic decision tree based chatbots and you're ordering pizza and in the middle of it, you say, you are asked what toppings and you say, no, forget it. I changed my mind. I would rather get an ice cream. And it'll say, nope, I'm expecting you to answer, is it pepperoni or mushrooms for toppings? It will, they are rigid. That's a problem. And that's why no one has said, switch me to a chatbot. Even if you're getting inferior customer service, you typically don't. So yes, they are, they have been. But where you cross that big chasm from being rigid to being flexible is what Ankor pointed out, learning. You have to be able to graft onto that mind map automatically as you are having inductively, as you are having a conversation. You must continue to expand that mind map, and you must learn both episodically by events, and you must learn inductively by the experience that you're having as you are even escalating anything. And so if you look in the case of what EXL is pioneering with Amelia, it is very flexible today. In fact, in the customer case, that's one of the big things that they want is the human level of flexibility. It will never tell you, sorry, I was expecting an answer like pepperoni or mushroom.
And you know, I'm so pleased to say that overwhelmingly our audience think that chatbots are totally not like AI conversational AI. In other words, conversational AI is streets ahead. And so, as I always say, let's stop the bot chat and move on. And so with that in mind, actually, you made a good point there, Ankor, because Mahesh has put a question forward. Would you like to take that one, please?
I will, and I know Chetan will. Chetan's really, really proud of some of the capability here, so I'm sure he'll add it. So Mahesh, the way conversational AI actually is treating it as a human conversation. So you could, for example, I'll give you a typical use case. The AI asks you for your address. You say 100 Main Street. And then the AI says, oh, what happened? You talk about that. Then you remember, oh, it's not 100 Main Street, it's 102 Main Street. You interrupt the AI and say, by the way, I got the address wrong. And this is seamless. The AI is actually able to go right back to where you had talked about the address and said, oh, you want to change it from 100 to 102? And it does that. So it's not just about an interruption, because an interruption is, I would call, a plain vanilla case. It's about an interruption to take it earlier in the journey. And that really is, in my mind, that is the manifestation of how flexible and real and human and empathetic some of what the AI use cases we're developing are. Chetan?
Yeah, I think, again, Ankor, you let it off perfectly. Mahesh, your question is how is the question that you're asking? How will conversational intelligence? And I think that without giving away too much of the keys to the kingdom, but actually giving credit to where you cannot fake all of this stuff. You cannot say, I'm going to have a classic decision tree, which is an IVR 2.0, and achieve human levels of flexibility and human levels of being able to switch between different threads of conversation and give that same level of customer experience. Alistair's talking right now. In the middle, if we suppose we switched over and started talking about his neck of the woods and fish and chips that he's planning on having for lunch, or actually he happens to be in France, so croque d'argent for his lunch. His brain has one part of his neural networks were lit, and then they completely started to beta attenuate over a certain distance of time, and another set of his neural synapses lit up. That's what's happening in Alistair's brain right now when we switch the context. So if you are sincere about doing that, you need to know and study the theory of spread activation. Luke Zettelmeyer has a thesis on this, since your question seems to indicate that you are very serious about this. Zettelmeyer's thesis shows how our brain switches between one thread of synapse, which attenuates and switches the context into another thread, and then statefully switches back and forth between these different threads of thoughts that we maintain in our head. Sorry to bore you too much with the mathematics, but I think the question demanded it seemed like a real intrigue with how you actually achieve stateful switching between the threads.
I appreciate you firing my neurons with the thoughts of fish and chips.
Yeah.
That at least, if not for the viewers, is excellent. I got a great question here, and I think I'm going to put this to you, Ankor, because the question is: do you require the customer to provide structured data from the beginning? In other words, provide you all the existing database, or do you do work from scratch with the customer? Which way round is it?
We definitely don't require. If we were waiting for structured data, we wouldn't have moved off square one. I think it's this is a false duality because we don't require structured data, but we're actually never starting from scratch either. So Alitza, it's a little bit in the middle, and let me explain to you what we mean. For most of our customers, together with IPsoft and EXL, we already have use cases. And those use cases already infuse the technology with a certain amount of domain understanding. So we don't need data to teach it anything. We can actually get started and then allow the AI to learn over time. What is important, though, is for us sometimes to be able to close a customer issue, we might need to query data. So this is not for the AI to learn, but a customer might ask, what's my balance? A customer might ask, where should I go if X part of my equipment is damaged? For that, you've got certain databases which need to be integrated, but that's never an issue because you don't have to provide the structured data. It's very, very easy for us, the EXL and the IPsoft team, to actually go into customers' databases to just create these thin data lakes to power the AI to close calls. But you definitely don't need to provide data sets. It's hitting the ground running because of the domain already infused into the technology.
Thank you, Ankor. You sparked something in me there, which is to move to Chetan with a question, because you made the point there about what is my balance, and okay, that's fair enough. People will ask that, but what if they put multiple intents in their chain? What if they ask for the balance but don't pay this out until this date because how does Amelia handle that, Chetan?
Yeah. And multiple intents are very much a part of what humans do. You can actually, you not only sequence multiple intents, you parallel and run multiple intents in tandem. Your brain is a multi-threaded engine, and it cannot be a single-threaded. You cannot mimic human levels of cognitive capabilities by a single-threaded decision tree. And I think just dovetailing on what Ankor was saying, it's Alitza, and I forgive me if I'm butchering your name. Alitza, I think your question is hits a very sensitive note. RPAs are a very essential part, for instance, but what is the limitation of automation in RPA? They only take structured data. Your question shows the insight. RPAs are screen scraping and taking structured data, whether you have taken the payload in saying EXL, I meant Excel format. But if you take it in an Excel format, or you're taking it in any other format, an XML payload or EXL or Excel file, you're always taking the data in a structured format for an RPA. The challenge is your customers are not talking in XML payloads. They're not talking in Excel spreadsheets or form feeds. Your customers are talking in natural language, which is total. How do you transform that unstructured data to structured input system in the back end for automation? That requires cognitive capabilities. And that's where a real natural language process understanding system has to be able to take what Ankor was pointing out, unstructured data, and structure it for it to operate on the back end and achieve automations for you on behalf of you, as opposed to making it incumbent on the person providing the input that it is expecting structured data from you. Sorry to elaborate on that, but it's a very pertinent question, because often you find, oh, I have an automation system, but the big chasm you haven't crossed is the input that all these automation systems are taking is all structured data input. And you need to be able to cross that chasm.
As you well know, Chetan, one of our gifted colleagues always says, humans don't stick to scripts. And I think
That's right.
you're utterly underscoring that. And Ankor, I know that you as an organization do a lot in the health arena. So I think this next question, which you can see there for yourself, around what difficulties we could foresee using Amelia in healthcare counseling or behavioral change communication. So perhaps I'll pass that to you.
Yeah, that's a great question from Shailesh. We're actually, so we'll have to break down behavior change communication. So we're working with some of our healthcare clients where we see adherence is a big problem, right? So you get admitted or you go to your doctor, there's a certain prescription, there's a certain way you've got to take the medicine. And the behavior change over there is really about making them adhere. We're exploring use cases where that can actually be solved really well using an AI. So actually, I'll use the example of my mom. When she's got a little bit of a diabetes problem, but when she goes to the doctor and the doctor suggests medicines, the adherence is not about behavior change. It's really about having confusion about, is there a conflict between medicines? How should I take this? Not having the doctor accessible. And we're finding a lot of success in changing behavior by understanding exactly what was causing the patient not to adhere. And there's a subtle message over there. If you tackle it at a behavior change, no AI or human can solve it. On the other hand, if you understand where the patient's at, understand what is the problem, nothing better than AI to actually solve it. So Shailesh, I hope it's not a gobbledygooky answer, but the way we're solving it is taking specific use cases in behavior change and solving them. Chetan, anything to add to that?
No, I think you nailed this, and you are a preeminent provider in healthcare. So you're speaking from complete knowledge. You've done more in transformation of healthcare than most companies.
And I think, Ankor, one of the points about assisting with behavioral change using a conversational agent is it's handing time back to the healthcare to do the important thing, give the best care to the patient. And just see, got another a great question here. I think, Chetan, you'll enjoy this very much. I can't think of anybody else better to answer it. Does Amelia integrate with RPAs other than one RPA? And why is one RPA preferred by Amelia?
I see a flood of questions coming in, and I'm going to try and be precise and not let my preoccupation with cognitive take over. But absolutely, it integrates with all the major variants of RPAs because it has to integrate with all of it has to be in the ecosystem. Your digital employee challenge, if you really hire a human employee, and if you really hire tomorrow a digital employee, challenge him to the same levels that you would challenge your human employee. Would you tell your human employee to take input from Teams, from phone call, from Slack? Then make your digital employee do the same thing. Would you expect your human employee to learn? Make your digital employee. And that's where you will find the difference between a chatbot and the limitations of a chatbot versus a human employee. And I think if I read up a question that I'm trying to see in the interest of time, existing chatbot-based solution to conversational AI-based solutions, tons of time we have had the exact same frustration from people who have said, oh, but I found myself going for a simple decision tree-based system and it is inadequate for delivering the kind of customer experience that EXL prides itself in delivering. And we have got automated systems that actually take the information from that warm populate into a conversational AI-based solution to give you a warm start for migration from a limited linear flow system to a multi-threaded conversational AI-based system. So the answer to the other question about RPA, yes, it integrates with all variants of RPAs, including one RPA.
Thank you, Chetan. And we're right at the top of the hour. And I know we've got plenty of questions here. And you can, we will keep a note of these questions. We can help you with these if you want to reach out to us at EXL or IPsoft. We're more than happy to do that. But I have one great question here at the end, and it basically says, what would be the best way to move from an existing chat-based solution? Well, I would be tempted to say, call us, EXL or Amelia, and we can guide you through that answer. If that doesn't sound too salesy, forgive me for that. But I'd like to wrap up now, and thank you for joining this webinar. And we hope it's brought you both insight and value. And of course, I hope it's been a good experience. One word sums up the challenge of infusing AI with customer experience, and that's velocity. You need the right direction, the right pace, and so the right partner. EXL and Amelia are here to assist you on that very path. So we will follow up this webinar with an email, the relevant links, and give you an opportunity to access a compelling white paper from EXL. Please don't hesitate to talk to us. EXL and Amelia, conversational AI and outstanding customer experiences. Naturally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.